Right. So low Earth orbit Earth observation applications. So this is about using the data generated. Space is not always about building technology, building satellites. There's also another aspect which we are moving more to as a society, and that's the data gathered. And there's a lot of data being gathered. I think it's more than 6 terabytes of data a day. And that is a lot. If you think about all the different companies that gather this data, and they're all trying to sell it to you, essentially. And obviously, the more quality the data, the higher you can sell it for. Such as one space image I know can cost around $70,000 an image of a particular area on the Earth. They could charge you $70,000, so you can actually make a lot of money. There's also free data, of course. For those, usually Google actually has gathers all the free data, satellite data around. If you want to go check out how they um, gather it, and you can actually do your own data analysis on the Google setup. So the first space application is you can detect the quality of water. So you can detect quality of water from space, whether it's dirty, acidic, is it quality water for people to drink or not, and that's usually different using different electromagnetic waves and how it reflects off the surface of the water. You can tell more or less accuracy whether it's good or not. Oil spills. So this uses two things, or actually one thing, but you could use the other. Radar. So radar is pretty powerful because it works during the night and the day. So what happens with is radar, it's the way it reflects off the surface of the water, the oil and the water. And you can actually tell it apart and say, oh, actually, this is an oil spill, or a ship is throwing its garbage into the ocean, which happens quite a lot. Um, it's actually a very bad environmental thing, and radar helps us to do that. And they also use radar in military applications to detect, well, what's on the ground, and obviously, yeah. With space, there is always a dual use. So there's always a military application and it's always a society application. Or yeah, the dual use effect. The third one is vegetation monitoring. This is probably the biggest one, biggest money generator. So you're just monitoring whether you're monitoring you can monitor the soil, the grass, the forests, whether it's been affected by fires or not, whether it's burnt, or whether there's a drought happening, all sorts of things with vegetation monitoring, or how the environment has changed over the last 20 years due to climate change, or whatever phenomenon that has occurred in that region, especially if you have a huge area to cover. Satellites can provide that coverage much more quicker and easily. There's also disaster management. So this is when you're able to detect fires or floods and how you can warn the people on the ground there's a flood coming or there's a fire occurring in a particular area. Firefighters should go and take out that fire before it spreads, especially during the drought season. That's very quite common. That could actually work in Africa quite a lot around the forested regions. Usually on the outskirts, fires usually occur, and if you gather data over the last 5 years and you do sort of like a video of it, you can actually see the vegetation being reduced to the fire and actually increasing when there is no fire anymore. And it actually helps quite a lot with those on the ground. So this one is more about urbanization or transportation systems on where to build the next cities or urban areas. You can actually track how society is grown. So if our society has grown, or how it spreads out effectively, and where to actually put transportation systems or infrastructure in place for the system to go through, such as buses and trucks. You can actually use satellite data for that. You can actually also use it for making money. So effectively, if you buy a plot of land, let's say you buy a plot of land today, and you think in the next 20 years you'll be able to build something on it, whether it's going to be a hotel or it's going to be a house that you can rent. So McDonald's did this. They effectively bought a plot of land, and over 20 years they would see how the area has developed. And if the area is more city-like, uh, area yes, is more city-like, then they build a McDonald's there, and you've effectively saved money because you don't have to buy the land at more expensive price. But if it turns into more of a residential area, then they sell it off. So they used to do that quite a lot. You could do that in South Africa, or you can do that across Africa. Just buy a plot of land, if you have the money, of course. Buy a plot of land and see how it develops, or the area around the land develops over the next 10 to 20 years. Precision farming. So you can actually use satellites to calculate the yield growth of crops of a country just by knowing the size of the farms and the type of food and when it is grown, whether it's grown during the summer days, winter days, and you can actually do all these sorts of calculations and determine how much crops can be grown in a particular year. And then governments can use that information to then make predictions on whether they need to buy more of the crop in the future or buy less, depending on how much growth they think they're expecting from the current year. You can also tell farmers, instead of farming in a particular region, because you're not going to get much growth or last year's growth wasn't as good, you can farm in a region next to it. So you can actually just split out the farm into grids, and you can then detect the yields of that particular area, whether it's rained a lot or you've over farmed it and things like that. And I think with a few particular countries more in the desert areas, desertification. So essentially the desert can grow or reduce due to maybe a heat wave or climate change, things along those lines. So countries who have problems with desertification can actually do that. You can also use it for space applications for maybe detecting crime. So you can actually determine regions where specific crimes occur and seeing where the hotspots are, which is probably what they do now. So they actually know where particular hotspots are across a particular country, and you can then start to make decisions on, okay, no, we need to put a more stringent police force or more police in a particular area to try and reduce that and things like that. That's essentially how space works, well, space applications works. So at the end of the day, the data is there, whether you're going to buy it or it's for free, and only you know in what issues your area has. And so if you go and gather the data and then you can analyze it to better improve your area, then that's one good way for space to work. That is the best way for it to work, how it benefits you on the ground. So I think we need more people to be aware of space, so that these sort of things can occur. People can gather the space data and then utilize it to their advantage, which is happening across Africa. There's quite a few projects that are focusing on precision farming. There's one or two companies that are doing that. So there's actually plenty of room if you want to start your own company in this industry. South Africa is more of building things. So there's actually quite a lot of room for data analysis on how to improve regions and so forth. So yeah, that's today's video. Next week, I'm going to talk about medium Earth orbit satellites. So you're commonly known as GPS, but altogether, it's known as Global Navigation Satellite Systems. And so see you next week.